afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Yvette Monroe, and I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Women's Democratic Club. This afternoon, I have the pleasure of introducing one of our moderators for the evening, but before we do that, I'd like to introduce you to our president, Diane Conway.
Hi.
And some of our members of the Community Education Committee, Sarah Wolek, our co-chair. We have Allison Bennett. We have Tracy Diane. And we have a few other people, so thank you so much for coming. I would like to ask at this time, is there anyone here from the press or the media? Thank you. Could you identify yourself?
My name is Anna Vicky, and I'm with Maryland Matters.
Thank you. All right, well, we're going to get going. I would like to thank Tom for the iced tea. Thank you so much. So I'm going to introduce to you Kelly White, who's the program director for Detained Adult Program, Capital Area Immigration Rights Coalition, and she will take care of the rest of the program. Thank you.
Today we're going to be talking about some of the most pressing immigration issues that Montgomery County is experiencing at the moment, as well as the federal and state and local changes we've been experiencing. It's my pleasure to be the moderator here. At the end of our discussion, we're going to have an opportunity for Q&A. This does not look like a rowdy crowd, so I don't think we're going to be passing out note cards or anything like that, but at the end we'll have about 15 minutes where people can just raise their hand if they have questions for the group, for the panelists. So I'm very fortunate to be here today with this group of panelists. Here I've got Claudia Quinonez, who has been a Montgomery County resident for the last 13 years, and I apologize, I say MoCo all the time, Montgomery County. I know it's the abbreviated version. But she leads the DMV, or the DC Metro region with Maryland and Virginia, as a program organizer with United We Dream and the field manager. She currently attends university at Trinity. And then we have Cathryn Paul, or Cat for short. She's a Maryland Citizenship Program Coordinator with CASA. She is the child of immigrants from Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, and she has served over 1,000 people who've naturalized since she's been the program coordinator there across Montgomery County. She's passionate about building power in immigrant communities. Grateful to have you. And then we have Nguyen-Vu, who's our Director of Montgomery County Office of Community Partnerships, or OCP. She joined OCP in 2012 as the Language Access Coordinator. She's also served as the chair of the LGBT, or lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer affinity work group. She's also served as liaison between sister cities between Montgomery County and others in Xi'an, China, India, and
Korea.
Yes. And then she's also formed the Montgomery County Legal Immigration Service Provider Network. So grateful to have you.
Thank you.
So we wanted to start with some topics. Some of you all submitted questions in advance, but I think we're going to start out hearing from Claudia about current legal issues that immigrants are facing in Montgomery County.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to start by sharing my story. So I was born in Bolivia and came to the US at the age of 11. I came here on a tourist visa, and I have called Montgomery County home ever since. I grew up here. I went to Silver Spring International. I went to Blair High School. And when I was growing up, I was completely undocumented. I was granted DACA, deferred action for childhood arrivals, 3 months before graduating from high school. But before that, I knew that I wanted to get a higher education, and so I advocated for the Maryland Dream Act that was won in 2012. Growing up, I always felt welcome and loved by my neighbors and by everyone who lived in Montgomery County. I never felt any type of discrimination, and so that was great. So now I'm currently a DACA recipient. Because of DACA, I was able to go to Montgomery College, pay in-state tuition, transfer to Trinity Washington University. We'll be graduating in May 2020. Yay. think I would have been able to do without it. So just to mention DACA, DACA was, and talk more about DACA and what other immigrant youth are facing in the county. So DACA was a program that was enacted by executive order by President Obama in 2012, 11? 12, right? It basically stops or defers people's deportation while it's active, right? So it's a work permit, and with that work permit, you can get a social security number. As we know, our current president decided to rescind the program in 2017, and ever since then, there have been legal battles in different appellate courts. Ultimately, what's happening is that the DACA case has been taken to the Supreme Court, and the oral arguments are going to take place in November 12th, which basically will assess the legality of DACA and whether or not it's constitutional. So this basically means that if the court decides and says that DACA is unconstitutional, I will lose my protection. It means that the government already has my name, my address, my date of birth, and it could potentially lead to deportation. And this is the reality that other 800,000 people are facing, and other Montgomery County residents and their families. So on November 12th, we're gonna go to the Supreme Court. I hope to see all of you there. We will have a protest to let the court know that communities in the U.S., communities in Montgomery County are supporting DACA recipients like myself. Working in United, so in United We Dream, I work with immigrant youth. We work with many high schools and colleges through the DMV. We're currently working with students at Montgomery College, Gaithersburg High School, Blair High School, Norwood High School, and we work with people that have just gotten to the U.S. and with people that came to the U.S. when they were little. One of the biggest challenges that immigrant youth are seeing right now, especially new arrivals, is that they're being racially profiled and being placed in gang databases, which basically makes them ineligible for any type of relief or to adjust their status. And I just want to mention something about this. So whenever students are placed on gang databases, it's mostly because of the way that they look and the clothes that they're wearing, right? And many times, if you ever go to Walmart and you see khaki pants and like plain colored T-shirts, those are like the most affordable, low-cost items that you can see there, right? And many times, those are the only items that families that have just migrated to the U.S. can have access to. And so that is closely correlated, right? If you are poor, you're probably gonna go to Walmart, get these clothes because they're cheap, and then you're going to school, and the system and the schools are telling you that you are a gang member based on what you're wearing. Another thing that's happening is that students and immigrant youth many times don't have access to resources. This is something that I often see when I speak to them about things like the College Promise Act, right? I think that's the name of it. That basically gives all students that have graduated from a Montgomery County high school 2 years of free community college, and many of our students and immigrant youth still don't know that those are programs that they have access to regardless of immigration status. And so what this means is that many of them are not pursuing their dreams, are not going to school because they think that they have to pay rent when they have these resources in their communities. Another big challenge that I see, I'm sorry if it gets anyone upset, but something that I often see is school segregation, right? We're seeing that low-income Latino and minority communities, people of color, are being concentrated in certain neighborhoods and are going to the same schools where not a lot of funding is being allocated to those schools, and it means that they have less resources, they have less after-school activities, it means that they're going to get less support, and so it means that they're probably not going to be performing as well as other students in other parts in the county. And so this brings other implications later on in life. I also briefly want to mention something that happened a few months ago. We know that our county executive passed an executive order by the name of Montgomery County Trust Act, right, which basically stops the cooperation between local Montgomery County Police and ICE. Personally, I have seen that it has brought some sense of relief to the community because they know that this is something explicit, and they know that the community and that the police will not collaborate with ICE. However, we have seen an increase of anti-immigrant sentiment in the county. We saw that there was a protest, anti-immigrant protest here a few weeks ago, and that has brought more fear to the community. All those people that have said that immigrants are not welcome here. And so currently our communities are feeling a tiny bit more secure because of the Trust Act, but they're also feeling more cautious because they know that all these anti-immigrant people are out there and are not wishing for immigrants like myself to stay here in the county. Other challenges that, well, that's all I have to say. My other fellow panelists will share other things that, yeah, thank you.
And Kat, Paul?
Yeah.
I wanted to begin maybe by asking you about your role as citizenship coordinator. What sort of trends have you been experiencing there? You can start us off.
So first of all, thank you for having me. I am filling in for Kim Propiak, who is on the flyer. So I'm sorry, she wanted me to tell you guys, she's sorry she couldn't be here. But I'm happy to talk about a little bit about CASA. CASA, if you're not familiar, is an immigrant advocacy and services organization. We are located all over Maryland, as well as Pennsylvania and Virginia. I worked out of the Rockville office, which is about 10 minutes from here. And as you mentioned, I coordinate the citizenship department. So what I do there is basically assist. We do about 1,000 applications a year. Assist legal permanent residents, folks who have their green cards, apply for naturalization, to get their citizenship. In addition to that, we do green card renewals. We do attorney consultations. These are folks who maybe might have had asylum in the past, maybe they've had a prior deportation, maybe they have some criminal background. And then outside of that, we do taxes. So, and we do taxes for immigrants of all different statuses. So that's what I do. And to answer your question about trends in citizenship, wow, there's so many. And the number one thing that I can think of is the extremely long processing times. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the citizenship process, but you have to have your green card for 5 years, you have to be over 18, you have to meet some basic eligibility requirements, and then you can go ahead and submit your application. Right now, it is taking over a year to get your naturalization interview, right, to go through that whole process. And if you look online, USCIS says it takes between, I think right now it says between 12 to 25.5 months to go through your naturalization process, right? So these are all people who meet the basic eligibility, right? Who should be citizens, but have to wait up to 25.5 months before they can get an answer about whether or not they can become citizens. And I think that's extremely relevant right now, considering you have to be a citizen to vote in the 2020 election. So basically what they're doing right now is they're reviewing applications for people who submitted their application in 2017, right? That's where we are. So if someone is eligible and they want to vote in this 2020 election, it's not happening now if they submit their application. They might have an interview before, election time comes, but it's not going to be, they're not going to have enough time to take their oath ceremony, register to vote, all that kind of stuff in time. So that's that. And then on the taxes side, I just want to talk a little bit about sort of breaking down the myth that undocumented folks don't pay taxes, because they do, especially in Montgomery County. And I know because I prepare them, I do the taxes. And I would say more than half of the folks that we serve are undocumented. So I do just want to mention that, because as folks are talking about immigration on the national level, right? Everyone says, oh, these people don't pay taxes, and I just had to mention it. They do, I know, and I do them.
Ken, so how does someone pay their taxes without a social security number?
They'll have to get an I-10 number.
Okay.
Yes. An I-10 number is individual income tax assistance number. Tax identification number. But you can apply for it by filling out a W-7, and then you use that to file your taxes. The IRS has never had any sort of, they haven't partnered up with ICE or any other agency, which I think speaks to the fact that the IRS really just wants their money. And that's why, they're allowing this to happen. But yeah, tons and tons of people are paying their taxes, and the reason why is because they're good people, right, who want to do the right thing, who want to contribute to their communities. Eventually may have a path to citizenship if someone could petition for them, or something might happen in the future, so they want to do the right thing, they want to pay taxes. And of course, as I do citizenship, I see all the time folks who are undocumented at some point in their journey before they got to that stage, and they've been paying taxes the whole time. So we do taxes for free, by the way. We're a VITA site. We do, if you make under $54,000, we'll do your taxes. So
That's great. Okay. I was also wondering, there's been sweeping changes in the last year in immigration law. I've been practicing for about 10 years, and I've never seen the amount of changes in immigration law we've seen both in litigation and in rules that the administration, DHS, Department of Homeland Security has announced. And so I'm wondering, one of them was the public charge rule that will go into effect on October 15th. I'm wondering, as you are coordinating citizenship applications and assisting people, what impact, if any, have you seen there?
yeah, that's a great question, and hopefully you guys are already familiar with public charge, but it is this really racist policy, right, that's going to go into effect next week, that basically says don't use public services. And it is freaking out all the immigrants, not just in the county, but in the country. So for naturalization, LPRs, or lawful permanent residents, folks who have their green cards, it's not going to affect them at all. When they apply to renew their green card, or they apply for citizenship, and they have Medicaid, or they're on food stamps, or whatever it might be, it's not going to affect them. But nonetheless, they have the same level of fear, right, that folks have who will be affected by this. So the ruling itself is very troubling, but the effects of the ruling for folks who have different statuses is also very scary, right? Because people are calling the office who finished their applications, who are completely done, who say, cancel my application, shred all my documents, I have an undocumented sister, I have an undocumented family member, or I am in the middle of petitioning for someone and I don't want them to be deported, right? Or I was on food stamps for the past year while I was also on Medicaid, and now I'm scared to do this, even though it's not directly affecting them. And it's not just naturalization, it's all of our services across the board. CASA offers a variety of different services, from general legal consultations. We assist with, we take on housing cases, workers' compensation cases, all those sorts of things. And across the board, immigrants are saying, I want to cancel everything. I would rather not have health insurance, right? Even if you're disabled, if you're sick, if you have children who are US citizens, they say, I want to cancel Medicaid. I'd rather not have health insurance and not be protected than have some type of implication for my family.
And your understanding is that the rule is not going to be retroactive, so people who are previously on
Correct.
benefits.
Yeah.
And do Do you find like you spend a lot of time educating people about that rule?
Yeah, unfortunately. But I think it's good though that not just CASA, but there's a variety of other resources in the county who are educating folks on what public charge is and how they're actually going to be affected by it.
So other than public charge, are there other rules that you've seen come up that have affected people's ability to get citizenship or other concerns people are having right now?
I would say for citizenship, one of the main concerns that I see is the failure to pay the fee, right? It costs $725 to apply for citizenship. That's the fee. It's a lot of money. And there are fee waivers that are available. Right now, there's a proposal to get rid of one of the fee waivers completely and to stop allowing folks to apply through the fee waiver through public benefits, which is one of the current options, and in addition to income and some type of financial hardship. So that's been really unfortunate because now there are so many people who can't afford the $725 fee, right, who qualify for the fee waiver, but don't want to apply for it because they're scared, right? And this would be a good time to mention Montgomery County actually has partnered with CASA to provide a $300 scholarship. So for the most part, if you make under a certain amount of money, I think it's like 300% of the federal poverty guideline, you can apply for that scholarship and you'll get $300 to help you with the fee. But across the board, I mean, the fee itself is discriminatory, right? It says, hey, you can become a citizen if you can afford it, right? Because other than that, people meet every other qualification. They have the good moral character requirement, which means, you know, they have a clean background. They've had their green card for, you know, the minimum of 5 years. Oftentimes, members who come to us have had their green cards for 20 years and are waiting to meet that exception to take it in their native language, right? Or they've been working really hard to practice their English because that's another one of the requirements, to learn all of the U.S. history and civics questions that they have to know. They pay their taxes every year. They meet every qualification, and the fee's the only barrier.
And what do you think right now are some of the reasons that are compelling people to seek citizenship right now or naturalization?
Oh my gosh, the man in that White House right now. And you know what, we've seen a surge in applicants at CASA, and I think that happens anytime there's election. Because anytime there's election, they're constantly being bombarded with information, with false rhetoric about what's safe and what's not safe. And I think because they're hearing all of that information and because they're constantly hearing about immigration and the wall and being deported, I read a study, I can't remember exactly, but the study basically says that across the board, immigrants, regardless of their status, whether they're undocumented, whether they have their green card, whether they have TPS, whether they're citizens, have the same level of fear of deportation, which is ridiculous, right? So I think legal residents who are legally residing here still fear being deported, even though it's very, very difficult and unlikely that you would be deported if you have your green card. But nonetheless, I think it's just people are scared. People are scared with what they've been hearing, and that's what's been drawing them in.
I find this incredible information. I didn't realize when I practiced citizenship law 6 years ago, the processing times were about 6 months, and now you're saying they're 20.5 months. That's
and
really
that's here in Maryland, and we're in the Baltimore office. And USCIS has said that they're trying to cut down on processing times, but we haven't seen that, right? And they say that actually Montgomery County residents are being moved over to the DC office, but the processing times are maybe like a month or two, you know, sooner, which is nothing. And then, I mean, of course, in other states, in Texas, I know the processing times are ridiculous. So it sort of depends on how many people are applying, but
it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's also a fee-based service.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, now they're increasing the fee because they're saying that there's a backlog, and so because USCIS is fee-based, they're now saying in order to hire more staff, they need to increase the fees. So, I mean, there's a lot of barriers. There's a lot of barriers.
Well, thank you, Kat, and I'm sure our group will have many questions for you for a Q&A. So Diane, I wanted to ask some questions for you.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get us rolling.
Yeah. So thank you for having me here today, and also thanks to Claudia for sharing your story, and Kat for all the great work that you're doing at CASA. So you're hearing some of the challenges that are on the ground, so I'm just going to zoom up a little bit and talk about Montgomery County and our policies and kind of the work that we're doing across the county. So first, let me just apologize for the blue hair. It was supposed to be silver, but we had a little accident yesterday. But I think it's quite fitting that it's blue, considering I'm at the Women's Democratic Club here today. We all love the color blue, right? Yeah, exactly. So it worked out. So I should also know that I'm the daughter of Vietnamese refugees. My mother escaped from Vietnam when she was 9 months pregnant with me post-war. And we were rescued by a French ship, so I was born in Paris, and then came over to the United States when I was 3 years old. Spent a portion of my childhood in West Philadelphia, so I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood. And then I came down to Montgomery County in 3rd grade, and I've been in the area ever since. So that's kind of like framed my work and shaped my career over the years. So I think it's important for you to kind of just understand that history and how I got into this seat today. So as Kelly mentioned, I served under the previous county executive, Ike Leggett, for 6 years as the Asian liaison. That was my primary role in addition to all of these other things. Sometimes in community work, you end up working 6, 7, 8 jobs, right? So that was kind of me. And so I became the director of OCP officially at the end of January, and I was the acting director when the previous administration went out. So I've been a part of this work for quite a long time, and I've seen Montgomery County change and evolve over the past 20 years. And so, you know, I just want you kind of to understand like the framework of our office and the person who's leading it. Because that is very incredibly important to kind of implementing the policy piece. So, you know, I'm here to give you an overview of the county's resources and what our policies are across the board, but it's important to understand that really the full breadth of our work is deeply ingrained in creating a welcoming and inclusive and equitable county for all, and that's not just immigrants, that is for seniors, youth, everyone across the board. And so it's really ingrained in all of our work. So there's not necessarily one guiding policy or one program that we're working on. If you look at all of our departments and our work, we're all thinking about how can we be inclusive and diverse and welcoming to all communities. So I was asked to give just some basic statistics to Montgomery County. I mean, you all know that we are one of the most diverse communities in the entire nation and world. I'm very proud of that. As I travel, I see that there really is no place like Montgomery County, and I am truly lucky to grow up in this area. So, one of the things that I love most about Montgomery County is the diversity of food that you can find. You can always tell how diverse a community is by what food options are in the community. So Montgomery County is definitely one of my favorite places to be because of the food options as well. So our county is over 1 million in population. We're a little under 1.1 right now. We're 43rd for counties across the nation. 1 out of 3 of our residents are foreign born, and 43% come from a migration background, meaning one or both parents came from a different country of origin. And also here in Montgomery County, we have over half of the entire state's foreign-born population right here in Montgomery County, and less than 1 in 4 of our residents were born in the state of Maryland. So these are some really startling numbers. I mean, we all know how diverse the county actually is, but when you look at the numbers, it's quite impressive. 43% of our population is non-white, and out of that 53% It's roughly a third Black, roughly a third Asian, and roughly a third Latino. I mean, it really is kind of cool to see out in the square or walking down the street in Silver Spring, just the diversity in the community. And I should also note that out of the Black and Asian and Latino communities, there's also broad representation across different countries of origin and different languages spoken. So it's not like there's one dominating culture in Montgomery County. In the Black community, almost 40% of the Black community is foreign-born, meaning we have a huge influx of African and Caribbean immigrants into Montgomery County. Within the Asian community, there is a large influx of Chinese, Indian, Korean, Vietnamese immigrants as well. So there's really a broad range in diversity. There's over 170 languages spoken in Montgomery County public schools. So it is really, really diverse. So it is because Montgomery County is so diverse that our previous county executive created policies to ensure that Montgomery County was a welcoming community to all, and really charged our office with creating a larger policy table. So what happens is, receiving communities see these changing faces, right, and are worried about their seat in the table. While our previous county executive said, we're going to ensure that people who are already seated at the table can stay at the table, and we're going to build a bigger table so that communities who are underrepresented can be at the table when policy and budget decisions are being made. So the role of our office is to ensure that our government is competent culturally and linguistically to serve all of our diverse communities, and to also ensure that their voices are at the table, not serving as their voice, but working with communities so that the communities are at the table when these policy and budget decisions are being made. So the role of our office has not changed under County Executive Elrich. And in fact, we've deepened our work to not only be welcoming, but also to be inclusive and equitable as well. So just because we were welcoming and diverse doesn't mean that we were inclusive or equitable. And so now we are really starting to deepen our work in the community. So in response to the changes that have been happening federally around immigration, our office has taken a lead in that work because previously I and our office created the Citizenship, Legal, and Immigration Service Providers Network. It's a coalition of about 15 to 20 service providers that are working in that area. And the purpose of the coalition is to, build the capacity of organizations that are serving our immigrant communities around those service areas. So CASA is, obviously one of our biggest partners, along with, a number of other organizations as well. And so because we had already kind of led that work, when all of these federal changes were happening, our office is continuing to work with service providers to do three things. One is to get out information to residents on these policy changes, right? Because changes are happening so rapidly, there's so much information out there, and so we want to get out the most up-to-date, accurate information to as many folks as possible. That's one of our purposes. Secondly, to build up the capacity of organizations who are working in these communities. So, for example, you've heard about the challenges when it comes to citizenship. Well, we have, it's estimated anywhere between 50,000 and 60,000 plus legal permanent residents who are eligible to naturalize for citizenship today. 50 to 60,000, that is a huge number of folks who are not being served, right? And so we're working with our providers to provide more citizenship workshops, to put out more information on how to become a citizen. We've done things like establish citizenship corners in the libraries. We've been working through the Gilchrist Immigrant Resource Center that is also run of our office to increase the number of citizenship classes and workshops that are happening and to put out accurate information through the Gilchrist Center as well. And thirdly, also to serve as a advocacy voice by working with these coalitions. So our providers in that coalition serve immigrants across the board: African immigrants, Caribbean, Asian, Latino. I mean, you name it. It's across the board. And so, as a whole, these coalition members are working together on sharing best practices, collaborating on workshops. So for example, the Asian Pacific American Legal Resource Center has been working with CASA and also AYUDA to serve a broad range of immigrants here in the Rockville area. And they have workshops at least every 2 to 3 months here in the Rockville Library. And so really that's the role of our office, to be conveners, to work with our partners and providers to ensure that we are serving all of our communities.
I would say Diane was at the table this last July when there were ICE raids planned for our area that President Trump had tweeted out and others, and had convened a number of religious leaders, schools, and other community partners to try to plan for and help this community in the event that there would have been larger ICE raids.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. One of our biggest roles of our office is to build relationships and trust in our community, because we want community members to be able to engage with government, engage with law enforcement, and they can't do that unless there is trust in the community. And so our role is to be out there working through trusted stakeholders like nonprofit organizations like CASA, working through the faith communities. We have strong partnerships in the school system, and so business providers, philanthropy as well. And so, we really work hard to build these relationships across sectors so that Montgomery County, across all sectors, is able to serve on all of our communities.
And what do you think you see for the future right now, as we're entering into the next year and preparing for different leadership changes? Where do you think OCP will be moving forward at this point?
Yeah, so our office has really taken a central role in the conversation around creating welcoming, inclusive, and equitable communities because of the work that we've established and the relationship that we have with communities for the previous 12 plus years. I believe that we are going to implement more work around civic engagement. So I'm thinking of changing, and you're hearing this first here today, I'm thinking of changing our office's name to the Office of Community Partnerships and Civic Engagement, because civic engagement is such an important piece of this work. And the county executive and I have talked about it, and we think that that is a wonderful direction for our office to go in. Also central to the civic engagement work and the work of our office is the census. So in the midst of everything that's happening, the census is happening on April 1st, 2020. And so our office, because of the work that we did in 2010 around leading the county census work, is once again leading the work for 2020. And we have an incredible challenge in front of us. As you've heard my two previous speakers mention, there is a lot of fear in the community, right? Whether it is perceived or real to some folks, whether they are documented or not, the fear is real. And so asking people to engage with government and provide information on who is living in their household is a scary thing for a lot of people right now, right? I mean, you've heard Claudia's story about DACA and how she was a recipient of DACA, and now the government has all of her information, household address, all of that, right? And so in light of all of this, we are charged with ensuring that everyone in our county is counted, and it has to happen because the county relies on state and federal resources. Not only that, but it's also tied to representation, right? And so it is critical for us to ensure that all of our communities are counted in a fair and accurate way. And it is going to be insurmountable, a very difficult task. And so we're relying very heavily on our nonprofit partners, our faith communities, the relationships that we've built over the years, because if it's one thing for the Census Bureau to say, oh, it's, your information is safe and it's protected by Title 13, but it's another thing for someone's faith leader to say your information is protected and we encourage you to fill out this information. So the census is going to be critical for us moving forward, and that is really going to be the meat of this office's work between now and the beginning of next summer. I will also say, related to the census, that in 2010 we had one of the highest response rates in the region and in the nation. So we had an 80% response rate, right? Which means that 20% of our residents were not counted. That's 200,000 plus people who were not counted, and we lost an average of $18,000 per person over the past 10 years. So that is $3-point-something billion, right, in state and federal resources. We cannot afford that going into the census. And so we are relying heavily on our partners and folks like you to help us get out the word, because we cannot afford to miss one person.
And I think before we go into Q&A, I just wanted to also mention that every single one of the groups represented here, United We Dream, CASA, and Montgomery County government, were part of ICE Rapid Response this last summer. All of them were communicating at the table. I just think, if anything, what's happened over the last year is that there's been much better, impressive coordination between government and nonprofit groups to address the crisis that many of our communities are facing right now. There's more I'd like to say, but I think we should probably do some Q&A for our panelists. Yes. If you could tell us your name and
My
maybe.
name is Janelle Strassheim.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and this is directed to Cathryn. How do you address, and I ask this respectfully and curiously, how do you deal in working with income tax on the employment tax issue? Both with respect to the additional cost it presents and the analysis of whether folks who are being paid are indeed common law employees rather than independent contractors for purposes of Social Security?
That's a good question. Most of the folks that we do taxes for that are undocumented, they're presenting us forms, right? They might be presenting us, in some cases, a W-2 that they've gotten a number from somewhere and declared it, or they have a 1099 miscellaneous, or they're just declaring how much cash they've made,
Right.
okay, by cash or
So
check.
talk about the 1099 and the cash relative to employment taxes.
Are you a tax lawyer?
I am.
Yeah.
And I can do it on the side too.
Yeah.
It seems like bite you in the butt in the back in terms of liabilities.
I know people who are paying like 20% of what they make, right, in taxes, and there's no way for us to check, right, how much exactly people made, but people are declaring like a big amounts of money, right? And with the 1099, you have to take what's on that form, right?
So they come in with the 1099 and you file for
And
the
we file it
employment
with
tax,
the I-10 number.
And you do the employment tax
Yes.
too.
Yes.
And you don't dig behind it and say, this doesn't look like an independent contractor.
Well, the thing is that the IRS wants to know what you made, and
Yeah.
that's it. They're not, and not that's it. There's so much more that goes into that, but
You can't get into that.
but we can't.
Got it.
We take what the applicant tells us and we declare it.
It's great what you do.
And we work to figure out if if there's any exceptions they might qualify for that they wouldn't know of. If there's any way, I mean, and this won't be happening now, but with Obamacare, right, the penalty for not having health insurance was a big thing that cost a lot of our members tons and tons of money. But all we can do is take what's given, right? So we're not investigating anyone, we're just taking what they give us, and we can chat more about this later as well.
I'm not really talking about investigating, more like counseling.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard.
I feel like Janelle might be a good volunteer to come help out at the Vita.
I know where to find her.
I'm here because I'm
My neighbor.
trying to help some friends who are trying to adopt undocumented children that have been abandoned. Do you know them? I can help you.
I think when I did the civil law, I know I had a lot of tax attorneys, on my speed dial for those types of in the weeds questions. So I bet it would be, yeah.
By way of multi-cross-directional commentary, so tax law versus, status, you mentioned segregation at public schools, and along with the work that we're doing with this panel through Women's Democratic Club, we have a panel on October 17th, also free, at the County Executive Building, on desegregating MCPS and the upcoming boundary analysis, and the foremost national expert is going to be leading that at 7 o'clock.